Welcome to Make That Paper, the show where we talk about all the crazy jobs we do to make the cash we need to pursue our artistic dreams.
And to support the formidable Joy Foundation, who provides access to clean water in Malawi, Africa, as well as the Actors and the Writers Strike Funds.
That's right. On today's episode, we are going to pay into the Rideshare Fare, get engrossed by the short-term host with the most, and we'll probably do a little kidding about house-sitting. We are your hosts, Jaime Parker Stickle.
And I'm Jason Bieber.
And on today's episode, we welcome a magnificent writer who has traveled the globe, penning scripts for shows like The Shield, I love, Soul Food, again, love, General Hospital, auditioned for several times, and essays for Writers Resist, Angel Flight, Literary West, and Mother Magazine.
And she's surviving the writer's strike because she lives in Toronto and teaches screenwriting at Toronto Metropolitan University.
That's so cool.
But you know she's also got a side hustle up there.
Yeah, that's right. We've been trying to get her on here for so long, and we are absolutely thrilled to welcome her to her podcast debut. So please make some noise out there in podcast land for the fabulous Leah Langworthy.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We're super
Welcome.
We're so excited to have you.
Podcast debut. How have you not been podcasting?
I don't
all this
understand.
I'm a virgin. What can I say, guys?
The same thing every virgin says.
Yeah, that's right. That's what she said.
Thanks for having me.
How do you guys know Cindy from Formidable Joy?
I don't know Cindy from Formidable Joy. I do know that you have a Facebook page, and for your birthday this year, you did a fundraiser for Formidable Joy, and I just wanted to throw that into your intro.
Oh, got you. I was like, okay, she does some serious work. I love her. Okay, cool.
We do some serious research for our guests on this show because, you know what? Y'all don't toot your own horns enough. Like, that's the thing with artists is it's like, oh, they were being humble. Let's go online and figure them out. Like, this is not...
If we stopped at the bio that you sent us...
No.
I like to scratch the surface, but I also am compulsive and I like to dig.
Yeah, and so I'm teaching now undergrads, and it's such a blessing because I feel like, and we'll talk about our teaching, but I feel like people are telling them that that's not good enough for your resume, like doing that student film that you spent endless hours on, and like it's beautifully edited and you wrote that yourself, and they're like, but you have to put student film on it and downplay it. And I'm like, oh, no, like you did all those jobs like as well as a professional. Like that was your product. Like you should be proud of that and boast about it. Like don't shy and like humble yourself. Like put it out there. Like you're capable of doing these things. So I'm so glad that I get to like get them at this age and tell them like, no, don't let anybody.
I think it's also very American. I think you actors too are very much more comfortable. I mean, not all actors, but I think you have to have that skill set, right?
Yes.
We're just like want to stick our head under a pillow and like, oh my God, I have to talk about myself. Oh no.
That's true.
Oh,
that's true. I mean,
but that's what the book tour is about.
Yeah. That's why you have to hire PR, and that's why you have to make money to hire PR separately than just getting the book
industry. If you think about it, it's like I've been told many times that my bio was too long and to shorten it. So like, they want to give all the glamour to the actors, the director, the writer. It's like, and the writer is Leah Langworthy. Next.
But I think like part of this strike that's happening right now is also identifying the fact that nobody is anything without the words on the page, right? Like writers play such a pivotal role, and taking a back seat for so long. I came out as a writer, and acting was always my passion and something I did, and so I wanted to be able to be both. But when I came out here in the early 2000s after school, they were like, you can't put writer on your bio. You can't put writer on your resume. You can't say that you did those things. Like, you can only be an actor if you're going to be an actor. Like, it just, to amplify what you're saying, it's like, I wasn't even allowed to tell people I was a writer. I could only be an actor. That was it. It's
Now
crazy.
it's all about the hyphenated, writer, director, producer.
Yes. Yes. I was doing stand up for a while, and I would say I'm a triple threat. I'm a writer and an actor. And then I would joke that I'm white. Because, okay. So I get it, and I'm amplifying that. And I'm so excited that you're here. And I want to talk about the fact that we went to UCR together. And then you are super fancy. Like, it's so hard to get jobs as teachers, and you went from writing on shows to getting a professor position at university in another country. Can we talk about that for a second? Because you're not Canadian, are you?
No, honey, I'm American. African American.
How did you break the international barrier?
How'd you get to Canada?
It wasn't like I set out to get a job in Canada. I at the time after the program, the Todd father introduced me to someone at UCLA. Started teaching at UCLA. It was one class. It was fun. It was nerve-wracking. I'll never forget teaching my first class. But that's where I kind of began really contemplating and thinking about a long-term teaching gig. And it really wasn't until my daughter approached me. She was a freshman in college, and she wanted to spend a year with her dad, who I had divorced when she was around 7. So
Wow.
She really wanted to spend some time in San Francisco with him. And once that kind of was planned, I was like, well, I'm no longer tethered to Los Angeles. Let me look at opportunities outside of Los Angeles in terms of teaching. I had friends who had left for academia, left Los Angeles, and the grass is always greener. I was like, wow, they can afford a house. They live in Vermont. They're making films. The films are doing well. It's like they're focusing on themselves. They're not getting sucked into writing jobs that they don't want to do.
Right.
They make their own maple syrup.
Yes.
So that I put my name in the hat for a handful of jobs, and I was offered 2. One was in Savannah, Georgia, and one was in Toronto. Got very close to a job in Colorado, one in Denver, 2 in Colorado, one in Denver, and one in Colorado Springs.
All of these are teaching positions at
All
universities.
of them are tenure track teaching positions.
That's insane and incredible. I want to emphasize how difficult that is for people and how many applicants there are for like a single writing professor position. And you are
I'm not trying to minimize, but compared to the real world of writing, it's nothing. It's nothing. So there's like maybe 90 people applying for these jobs, where in the real world, you're up against thousands of people. When I applied for Imagine Impact and I got my You're a Finalist letter, I was one of 40 out of 4,000 applicants. That's 1%.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 4,000 applicants for that gig, which would have, I didn't even, and they dwindled that 40 down to 20, and I wasn't part of the 20. So that's what I'm saying. When you're applying to Sundance, it's 10,000. Mm-hmm. When you apply to Tribeca, getting a film or trying to get, I've applied 3 times to the Writers Lab, which is for women over 40.
Yeah.
Never got in.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, I'm not minimizing. Yes, there's a lot of people who apply for these positions, but comparatively,
yes, 100%.
It's nothing compared to some of these high, programs that are very selective, like Sundance.
I did want to say, like, applying to Writers Lab and other things, and you have to be over 40. Like, it took me a long time to want to admit that I was over 40 and capable, and I think that that's an issue with a lot of people. Like, you're putting your name and your age on something and applying for something, and in this town, that can also work work you. And so by the time like I felt comfortable saying that I am 40, I was already past 40, like just starting to go, I should apply for these things, which is this year. I should start applying for things over 40 now. I know that sounds terrible, but it's a reality of the industry, right? Like,
well,
that's
one of those...
I think particularly for actors. I didn't feel that stigma at all. Never once entered in my mind as a writer.
Really, because I have a friend who's a writer, and she's written for Working Moms, and she writes here for several shows, and that does, like, she walks in and they're like, oh, she's over 40, and she feels it very heavily.
Not
like,
to say that ageism doesn't exist. I just don't. I have a bigger fish to fry. There's
got
a
it.
thing called
Yeah.
racism, there's a thing called.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
So
Yes.
I think ageism is real, and I'm not trying to negate that reality.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, for me, I'm like, what
You have it all. Yeah.
I just didn't. That just didn't enter my thoughts. I've definitely been like you're old kind of, take on, but at the same time, I just really think it's an asset more than a hindrance.
Oh,
Have
yes.
So, if people feel otherwise, and we are in a youth culture, we obsess over the young and, the now, the hip. But I have years and years of experience that the young and hip don't. So, it's a balancing act, hire a couple young folks and hire me.
But you also have a young hip daughter, the age of which, is really what the youth culture centers around. She's that age. So you're like, I have a front row seat. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm the best of all of it right here.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic.
And it's like a whole nother world.
Yeah.
So are you able to, in addition to teaching in Toronto, speaking of working moms, are you able to write for any Canadian television? Have you?
Yes.
Not officially. I did get some development funds, and I wrote my first dramedy. I am predominantly a drama, 60-minute drama writer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hour long. So I wrote my first half-hour dramedy, Charity and Chase, about two sisters, African Americans, who kind of flee the U.S. and end up living in Toronto. It's about two sisters who are kind of opposites, and they meet each other, but it's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
And it was
fun
to write something that was lighter. And so I'm in the process of taking meetings, even though I'm not in Toronto at the moment. I've been in California for 2 months. Yeah. But prior to leaving, I was taking a lot of meetings, and will continue to do so when I get back, and see where it goes.
That's awesome.
Did you keep your place in California?
Yeah.
No. When we get into our side hustles, I'll tell you. Like, I'm now in this gorgeous house in Berkeley, California, which is a house sitting gig. I was in San Francisco for 6 weeks at another house sitting gig. So I was thinking about this in the shower. I was like, I don't know if this is feeding my artistic endeavors, but it's really feeding my travel wanderlust.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I think that is something that that's one thing I like to talk about a lot. Is this is a little bit different, but adjacent jobs or doing things that like fuel another part of you. And
I think that's fueled my writing in the sense that it allows me some inspiration. Yeah. I'm a travel slut. I'll straight up tell you, I'm a travel slut.
That's the quote of the show.
Yeah, I'm a travel slut. I love this.
I did a year in between, a gap year between high school and college, and went to West Africa. I was all naive and romantic. I was going to get into my, African-American roots, or my African roots, if you will. And I did a year in West Africa, in Cote d'Ivoire and Abidjan. And I've just always, saved all my pennies and just traveled the world. Yeah. And when I meet people, they're like, how have you done these things? It has taken a lot of ingenuity, and it's not like I have a trust fund and I just, travel the world endlessly. But I've been to almost every continent, and, it's been a lifelong passion, and it hasn't stopped. So even though I'm not in some far-flung place, I'm in Berkeley right now, but
it's far-flung for many.
And you're from Central California. You're from Visalia.
That's where I'm not. I don't claim it. I was born in.
Does it claim you?
I hope not. I claim Los Angeles. I was born in Canoga Park, in the Valley.
Got it. Yeah.
So I claim Southern California.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
I like Visalia.
Oh gosh.
I mean, we go to Three Rivers a lot. We have a place in Three Rivers.
Okay,
right.
I claim Three Rivers if I grew up in Three Rivers, but I didn't.
Yeah. But Visalia, I understand.
Visalia's got the closest Jimmy John's.
Yeah, no, but you guys weren't raised there. It's like
Oh,
my
okay.
voice is getting shaky just thinking about it. I'm like, oh, don't make me go back there.
I
We're
won't.
not
I
gonna make you
promise.
go back there.
I promise. Maybe if we need to make a Home Depot run, but that's it.
That's
Yeah, I actually lived for part of my high school years in Farmersville, which is outside of Visalia, and there was no high school there, so I still had to go to high school in Visalia. It's just, yeah, no good memories.
Okay. Okay.
But my point being that you are a California native,
I am.
Yes.
and like, I think raising children like your parents raised, I think like, a more of a wanderlust feeling in general comes from, this climate. I don't know. It's different because in Michigan, I grew up in Detroit, and I'm like one of the few people that left. It's like most people go back and live within 5 mile radius of where we grew up, or they stay in the same city next door to their parents. Like it's not people don't
Right.
leave. People stay.
I always knew, like, there were people in Visalia, which is, I don't know, 3-4 hours from the ocean, that never seen the ocean.
Oh my God.
And so I knew I was just bursting at the seams to see the world. Like, I was just like, this place can only hold me so long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't just leave Visalia. I didn't just leave California. I left the country. I went to West Africa. So just to kind of give you, and then I saved up enough money when I was there. I was a Rotary scholar, and they gave me I forget what they called it, but it basically monthly allowance. And in Africa, there's not a whole lot of money to spend. You don't need to spend a lot to live.
Yeah.
So when it was over, I had enough money. I traveled up and down the East Coast when I got back. Then I started Berkeley, and every year in Berkeley, it seemed like I went somewhere in the summertime, whether it was Thailand or Europe. And then it just continued. I remember so many times quitting in television and entertainment. Jobs are secular. They're for 6 months, they're for 8 months. So after my 8 months were over, I'm like, where am I going? And I would go, and I literally return enough to have my rent money when I got back. But like, that was who I am. I mean, I've evolved,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to. I once went to the Cannes Film Festival. I was 25. I get a call from my friends, like, we're going to Cannes. I literally walked into my boss's office. I was working for Rescue 9/11, the William Shatner show.
Yeah.
Researcher trying to find stories for the show. I've been doing it maybe 2 years. I was bored. I was just kind of like, why am I doing this? It's not what I want to do. And she's like, come to Cannes. And I literally walked into my boss's office and was like, I just got a call. I'm going to Cannes. I quit.
I love that. I love
I
that.
the next day for Cannes.
God.
Cannes was like, it's a week or two or whatever. And then I ended up traveling. I went to Switzerland. I went to Spain. I went all over. And
You're already there. You're already there.
Yeah.
I swear to you guys, I think, and this is, 1995. So this is a while ago. I think I spent maybe $1,000, and I was there for almost over a month. Like, that's how I just stretched and stretched and stretched it. And I remember that time when I got back, that was the beginning of like, ooh, what did I do? Because then I had to find a job, and I had to.
Yeah.
So, so all I'm saying now, fast forward, I'm a professor. I have, legitimacy. I have credits.
Yeah.
I still have that desire to travel, and to spend 2 months in California is not cheap.
No.
So, while I'm paying rent in another very expensive city, Toronto.
Right.
Yes.
So this trusted house sitter has been a godsend.
So what is it? It's a service that matches you to it
it's a website. It's called trustedhousesitters.com. And you search, like, my daughter had wanted to go to London, so I typed in London, and you get people who have dogs, cats, horses, bunnies, birds, whatever, lizards, and they're looking for people to stay in their house and watch their pets in exchange to have free.
There's always pets, right?
Always pets.
Yeah.
So I discovered it during COVID, and it was literally like, because we were all in lockdown and I couldn't travel. So it was just like, I was looking at these houses, it's like, oh, a month in southern France, right? I was like looking on, scrolling the internet in my fantasy world of, where am I going next? And so once things opened up a little bit, I put my name in, the ring, and I got my first sit, and that was right after, that was probably 2021 was my first sit, and I've just, I've done dozens now.
So
And
do you not get paid? Is there okay, so the exchange is that you get to stay in a beautiful home.
yeah,
Okay.
and most of them are like, the one in San Francisco was my third time sitting for them. They have a dog, a cat. They let me use their car, so I don't even have to pay for a rental car.
Wow. That's
Wow.
great.
And it's like a $2 million house. It's 8 blocks from the ocean, 2 blocks from Golden Gate
Oh.
Park, like 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. Like, it's just, it's not like I could ever afford that Airbnb for 6 weeks. I was there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's, so aside from, so basically, it's like you're renting an Airbnb, an extravagant Airbnb, and you're paying through feeding animals.
Exactly.
And you get to cuddle with nice animals.
Oh, that's the best part.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
Jamie, I'm when we're done here, I'm going
I'm
on the
gonna look
website.
into this.
Yeah.
Okay,
South
so
of France Chateau sounded pretty snazzy.
So, I've never done it outside the country. So
Yeah.
when my daughter said she wanted to go to London, I looked into it. Like, honestly, if I were to take Gigi to London, I would only sit a cat, because you're really constrained when you have a dog. You have to walk them in the morning, in the afternoon.
Yeah.
What if we wanted to go to a museum and a show and dinner and be gone for 12 hours or longer
Yeah.
from the house?
Mm-hmm.
So, there are certain limitations. What if I want to get in a car and drive to Stonehenge or drive to the ocean?
Right.
Or, I'm limited by taking care of animals.
yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's worked for me because I'm, usually it's LA or here in the Bay Area where I went to college and where my daughter and my ex are. So, I'm not looking to take a day trip to Napa. I'm not playing tourist. I'm like
Right.
living here and
Work,
enjoying
yeah.
everything it has to offer, but I'm not really playing tourist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So do you teach classes in the summer remotely, or are
I
you
don't
off
have
for
any
summers?
topic. I have 3 months free. So I have, I have obligations, responsibilities. I have meetings. I have, tomorrow I have 2 defenses for MFA students who have to defend their paper and their script they wrote. So that will be on Zoom. But for the most part, I get a lot of time off as a professor. So that I love.
Yeah. So let's rewind for a second. So you graduated from Berkeley. Did you know that you were going to be a writer? Like, that's what
I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I didn't know it was going to be TV.
Okay.
I honestly thought I would be the American novelist, do short stories. Tried my hand at that, dabbled a bit, but I was working with some of the greatest of greats, my idols.
Yeah.
Maxine Hung Kingston was at Berkeley at the time. I think Alice Walker taught a class there at the time. These are just iconic
Yeah.
writers who I just adored. And I was like, oh my God, I could never write a woman warrior or something of that caliber. But so it's a blessing and a curse to work with your idols, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always knew I wanted to write. It wasn't until after Berkeley I went to Los Angeles, dibble-dabbled in different arenas, and then I kind of half-assed back into television. And it was just so different after working in development at Paramount for Howard Koch, who's like a huge veteran, old school Hollywood. His dad did Chinatown. It's like the creme de la creme, I felt so much like an outsider, so much like I couldn't see how I could fit into this world.
Yeah.
Then when I get to television, it was for a spelling show. I showed up and there were people that looked like me. There were a lot of women. It was just like, oh, wow. Like this, I could see myself here. I feel like I was, I could see a door, a crack in the door and how to squeeze in. Whereas in the old school, old Hollywood paradigm, I just didn't fit in. People golfing at lunchtime, like white tablecloth lunches. I just didn't, it felt so otherworldly.
Can I interject with a quick question?
Yeah.
It sounds like you, the way you fit in, the way you felt like you fit in, had very little, if anything, to do with your style of writing or the work itself, and it was entirely about the social
Atmosphere.
demographics.
Yeah, well, I honestly, this is before I even started really writing television. So because I was in features and feature development, I had been focusing on features. But then
Yeah.
so what happened is Kevin Arkadai, who's now still a very good friend, he became a showrunner on a spelling show. And he asked me if I wanted to be his assistant. And I was like, okay, sure. And he's an African-American dude. He created New York Undercover. So he was a very, very diverse group of writers, but I had never written a television spec at that point. So I'm just saying, just showing up, having Kevin in command, seeing the room that he created. One of my first tasks as his assistant was reading a stack of scripts, like literally, I don't know, 20 scripts, and him saying, okay, tell me what you think of these, which, put the best 4 on my desk tomorrow type of thing. And I remember going in, and these are from CAA and ICM and like all the great big, agencies. And I was really surprised. I thought most of them really sucked. And he's like, you really think you could do better? And I'm like, well, I think I can, and he really challenged me. And he's like, well, write a spec. So this is aging myself, but my first spec was an Ally McBeal.
Wow.
Was it great? No. But, it was my first. And I don't even remember my second, but I just kept on writing specs. And Kevin gave me my first job on Soul Food. He later was the producer, showrunner of Soul Food, and that's when I got my first writing gig.
That's incredible.
That's something that we actually encounter a lot on this show. And I know you were working for him in an entertainment position, but something that, because this show is about the side hustles that people do, and a lot of side hustles people do, we end up working for entertainment people. And people view you in a very specific way, and they have a hard time seeing you as anything else.
Right. You get stuck in that position for 20 years and haven't advanced because comfort, or it's coming, or my opportunity will arrive, but it won't.
What was funny with Howard is that I knew I beat out a lot of other people, and he was very quote, quote, impressed initially. He was like, well, you brought this, you challenged me, you were this. And then fast forward a year or two, there was no opportunity, no potential for growth. Mm-hmm. Whereas Kevin, my friend's ex-boyfriend, from the moment I landed, he was like, oh, you think you could do better? Write us back. I never heard that. I never heard like, what are you working on? Can I read it?
Yeah.
Never heard that.
Yeah.
Well, there are many different kinds of bosses, but there are 2 here. One is the kind who is just looking at you as a resource for them, and the other one who is looking at you as something that they can nurture someone that they can nurture and grow, and they see the spark and they take pride in, like, oh, I could see in 10 years her thanking me for the opportunity as she, as she becomes, what she's going to become.
Yeah.
And then there's a million other kind of bosses that I'd rather not talk about.
So how long were you with Kevin? Because you wrote...
Just for that, very short-lived. It was it was a spelling show. Kevin was paired with a feature writer. I forget his name, but he wrote Backdraft about the fire.
Yeah.
I remember his name was Greg, but I don't remember his last name. And Greg came from features, so they paired him with Kevin. They were co-showrunners, and it was very interesting watching that dynamic. Excuse me. Now we're gonna get into the weeds of like racial power struggle power struggle, but you had this, white man who had never been in TV, and you had a veteran black man who had run shows, and it was a bit of a clash of the titans. But it all worked out. But I think this show got pulled, and we were still shooting episodes. Literally, I think they had aired 2 or 3 episodes, and they didn't test well. And like a lot of television shows, they pulled the plug. They cut their losses. Like, why spend $1 million an episode, or 2 or 3 or whatever it was back then? And so I don't know. It maybe lasted 6-8 months.
Okay. And from there, what happened? Were you prepared to just to get another writing job? Did you have an agent that was helping place you?
I think I did get an agent. It's been a while. It was, a lot of jumping around. I think shortly after that, I left. I was dating someone who is now my ex-husband, but then he moved to Chicago, and I moved to Chicago, and that's when I got married. And that's when I had an agent, and the agent said, "Well, you're committing professional suicide by leaving LA. There's not much you can do in Chicago." And she said, "But one thing you can do is daytime. Are you interested in daytime?" And I was like, the intellectual Berkeley snob that I am, I'm like, daytime? What? And then she told me how much money I'd make. And I was like, yes, I'm interested.
Yes.
Yes,
All of a
thank
sudden, you realize it's a lot easier to be snobby when you have plenty of money.
Right.
Yeah.
So then there was this writing. I had to jump through a bunch of hoops, and in daytime, at least then, daytime now is like minuscule. There used to be dozens of shows, and now there's like 3 or 4 left.
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of the constriction. They saw the future. They knew that this was happening. So they needed new voices, people of color. They really wanted to kind of revive this dying medium. And so back then, they paid you to write a spec, which was an anomaly. So I got paid to write a spec. Then there was an ABC program that they asked me to apply for. Again, I don't know how many people applied, but 10 of us were chosen to do like I forget how many weeks, but I remember I got paid $1,000 a week, and maybe it was like 10-week program.
Like an incubator program?
They taught you the in and outs of daytime writing.
Got it. Okay.
It was in New York City, and I was pregnant with my daughter when I did that. And the year she was born was 2003, which was the year of another writer's strike.
Yeah.
And I had gotten asked to be, for lack of a better word, a scab. They asked me to write for a show, and that they would conceal my identity, that I would be a number. I was like, I'll pass. No thanks.
Good for you. Thank you for doing that.
But it's funny because I know other people in the program who did do it. They didn't officially tell me, but I have heard, through the grapevine, and they're now like very, very successful writers. So people always talk about like if you're a scab, your career will eventually end. But I didn't see that happen.
Yeah.
As a writer, and this is very pertinent right now, it's a lot more integrity based because you can do it anonymously. You can't, actors that, you can't, we can't break the strike lines. Our faces are
everywhere,
dead giveaways. Yeah. Maybe for mocap, but yeah, you can't, but yeah, it takes a lot of integrity, and so many writers are once again having their integrity tested because I'm sure the opportunities come in.
Well, for me also, again, I had just had a baby, so my husband made a decent salary. I had the luxury of saying no as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not to say integrity didn't play a role, but there were a lot of other factors that played a role. I was like kind of grossed out by the whole thing. I'm not into keeping secrets, and it was going to be this big secret. I'm like, ew, why? And then on top of that, the layering was, I'm a new mom. I just want to be with my baby. I don't want to write. I don't want to write right now. I remember in that program, how it worked was you were basically like a what's the term, like a ghostwriter. So there was a real writer and you were both given the same script. In daytime, you get a script on a Friday and you have to turn it in. It's like you have a week to turn in 70 pages.
Wow.
So the real writer would be used for air, their script. So you would write, and then they would compare them. They're like, to see like, wow, was Leah's better? Was it on par? Was it worse? Like, what did she do that this person who's been around for 30 years, what did she do differently? So the last weeks are that process. And I gave birth, and I had 1 week left in my contract and had to write one script. And my daughter is like on my titty, like, doing her thing. And I'm like on my computer writing my last script. And I knew it wasn't going to air, but, and I kind of half-assed it.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like, I just knew I couldn't do another, I think it was going to be a 15 or 12 week contract. My first 3 months with my daughter, I was just like, no.
It's too hard. I mean, I was doing a writing gig for radio when I just had my son, and I had to turn in, I don't know, like a dozen pieces for the next morning for the DJs. I had to turn in like 12 news pieces, entertainment stuff. But like, I was supposed to be able to finish it in 8 hours, and it would take me, because I had this new baby and just everything. It took me, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 hours, and I was like, this is not. I just no.
Where was AI when we needed it?
No. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No. It's,
Leah.
go ahead, Ben.
I'm sorry. I just, I wanted to ask you, about some of your side hustles that you were using to support yourself. At that time, you said your husband was making good money and you were able to just spend time with your daughter. At what point did it become necessary to
Divorce?
Divorce. I was getting there. Yeah, nothing like splitting up that mixed income to put the weight on your shoulders. Okay, so you got divorced when your daughter was how old?
7.
Okay.
That's right.
So were you writing at that time in between?
Honestly, I wasn't at that time. Life had taken its, had thrown a couple bullets, literally like potentially life-ending bullets my way. I had cancer. My then husband's brother died. We inherited his niece. She came to live with us. So I had a full plate.
Wow.
And writing kind of fell. I was dibble-dabbling. I was writing specs, but I wasn't working or being paid as a writer, really.
Yeah.
When I divorced.
And at that point, had you been working as a writer and getting paid, or?
Yes, but off and on.
Off and on. Okay.
But I had my husband had a steady income, so it wasn't, like the typical feast and famine reality.
Yeah. But you hung on to your agent through this time?
I went through a couple agents, I think, during this time.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
So life unloads on you.
Yeah, so after divorce is when I really, I was like, okay, how do I make this work? I have to figure out how to revive a older writing career. I have to be a single mom. I have to put food on the table. And one of the first things I did was Ubering. And this is back when Uber wasn't, I think it was before Lyft even existed.
Yeah.
And it was okay, it was.
Were you in Chicago still, or had you?
No, I was back in LA.
Okay.
So we skipped. So Chicago, my daughter was born in New York City. So then we did some time there, and we moved to New Jersey. And in Jersey, I moved back to LA. I was still married, and then when I got divorced in LA. So I moved to this quaint little place in the Hollywood Hills. Excuse me. And it was 2 bedrooms, and so my daughter would spend her summers with her dad. So I also had her room to rent out during the summer. So I did that, and I found that a lot less taxing and B more, I made more money.
Yeah, 100%. That is smart.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's smart.
And it was a lot of interesting people came through. So I had I'm still friends with a handful of people that came through and stayed in my daughter's room over the summers, and there were a couple that I would never have back. So
I'm waiting for this script. I'm waiting for this film or this script series, because I think that there's a lot of stories in that. We've known people who have done the same thing, or we had friends who leave every summer and they rent their apartment out for the summer, sublet it, and it gets interesting. It gets interesting really fast, but it is good money because people are like willing to pay.
But it's even more interesting if you stay there. If you rent
I know.
a place, you're gone. You know what I mean? But like if you're there, it's like that's a whole nother story. And the crazy thing is, I look back now and I'm like, what was I thinking? It only was a 1 bathroom.
Oh God, yeah.
Like, even as a renter, when I travel, if it's a 1 shared bathroom, I don't want to stay there.
No.
Yeah. I mean, we've had roommates before. We've all lived sharing with 1 bathroom with someone Mm-hmm. But when it's anonymous like that. Now, so was this when you were renting your daughter's room? Was that pre-Airbnb, or
No, it's Airbnb.
You were doing it on Airbnb. Okay. So it was like formal arrangement through the website. And in the early days of Airbnb, I don't think it was quite as easy to really vet people.
No, but when I was there, I would meet them. So, but back up, before I did that, I did do a house swap back to my travel slut ways.
Oh,
yes.
Right after my divorce, I was like, the thing that makes me feel most alive is traveling. So I did a house swap in the south of France. My little 2-bedroom unit, in it was right by the Hollywood Bowl. Lovely little place, but I'm talking small, okay?
Yeah.
And I got a house with 4 or 5 bedrooms and a pool in the south of France. And we swapped cars.
And those people stayed in your Hollywood home.
And because the Europeans have so much time for vacation, I think it was like 6-week swap. Actually, it was a 4-week swap, and I added a week before and a week after. So I was in Europe for 6 weeks, and it was lovely. So that kind of wetted my whistle, like, okay, well, how else can I use this property to, help me, help me survive?
Yeah.
But in terms of people who I'm still friends with who stayed, was one German dude, and he came with like all these suitcases. I was like, dude, you're here for like 2 weeks. Like, do you have so many suitcases? And it turns out he was a filmmaker, and it was camera equipment.
That's amazing.
And I said, well, show me some of your work. And he showed me, and it was beautifully shot. And I, that day, wrote a short script, and we shot a short while he was there. I was like, I'm putting this man to work.
Yeah.
So he didn't come to town for a job. He brought all his equipment.
Because he like went on a helicopter ride and took aerial views of the Hollywood sign and of the coast. He wanted to create a bunch of B-roll. He was doing a lot of music videos in Germany, and so he wanted the LA kind of B-roll in his repertoire, if you will.
His catalog, yeah.
Yeah, that's smart.
And it was one day he went to Santa Monica, and he came back, and these beautiful shots of the pier, the beach, seagulls. It was just like, I was like, damn. But he wasn't a storyteller. He was a DP.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, how do you feel about shooting something?
That's smart.
And,
Very good, thank you.
Totally. We shot it like in 2 days. It was fun. It was lovely. But yeah, he's one that he still comes back to LA, still working in the industry, still reaches out, asks for introductions here and there, or people that he met during his time in LA with me. And he's a good guy. And so a couple people like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I mean, I think like it's so interesting what we do when we're young, or what we do when we are artists and don't have the financial means that a studio has, or etc. We always think, like, you just wrote that and shot it with this incredible talented DP, and you're a talented writer, and you did it on your own, and you created something. And that's the idea that I try to emphasize when I teach, is like, you don't need everything they say you need. You just need some talent, and you need time, and you need to just be focused on that thing. Don't make it about the end goal being working for a studio and making something for them, even though, that's a good job to have, but that's a corporate job. Like, you're not going to be creating the stuff you want to create all the time. Right. So make sure you're satisfying your art by doing these things and bartering with people. Like, my big thing is always barter with people. Like, you have something to offer them. It might be that you're a writer, but that's so valid, because you see a lot of DPs who aren't writers, and you're like, you can't sometimes even see through their beautiful filming because they wrote it themselves, and you're like, what is this? I don't know what this is.
I see people who are, and I fall into this category too, is you want it to be, you're a perfectionist.
Yes.
And for me at that moment, what was really liberating and freeing and fun was, I was just like, fuck it. It was like, literally, if you write something in 2 days, it can't be that good. Do you know what I mean? If you shoot something in 2 days, it's probably not going to be that good. And it turned out okay, but is it going to win, like, is it going to get into Sundance? No. But I was still nonetheless really fun. I was really proud and happy that we made this short film in a matter of, like, I don't know, he was only in my house for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And one of
That's
those
amazing.
weeks he went to Yosemite. You know what I mean? So it was very empowering to just say, I'm going to do this, and we did it, and you have a final product. And, you know,
Yeah.
like I said, is it going to win awards? No. But it was
Yeah.
fun.
So while you're renting your room out, are you employed as a writer? Are you freelance? Are you on a show?
Freelance. I'm doing a bunch of things. I'm hustling. You know, it really wasn't until our MFA program that I really allowed myself to dabble in other mediums outside of screenwriting.
Yeah.
I love that program forced us to do what they call a second focus or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And I did nonfiction, personal
Yeah.
nonfiction. So that opened, I've always loved memoir. So that opened up that. But I mean, I didn't get paid a whole lot. I wasn't like making money doing that. But
Right.
I did get some pieces published. In terms of what I meant by the hustle, is just like interviewing for jobs, writing treatments, not getting paid, all the things that why WGA now is on strike.
Yeah.
It's like I was in the business of taking meetings.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Yes.
get paid for those meetings.
Right.
I was in the business of, writing treatments. And I didn't get paid for those treatments. I
Right.
was in the business of development hell. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
100%.
So that's what I meant by the hustle. Like, you
Yeah.
hustle, hustle, hustle. You have like 5 pots on the stove. You hope one hits, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
100%. So then I just want to say, when did you work on The Shield for a minute? Because
One of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
I was working on a cruise ship, had a lot of free time, and just watched the whole series.
I want to
back
hear about
back
the
back.
cruise ship now.
oh yeah, you can hear about that. That was a side hustle too. But The Shield is very specific. I mean, I know you said you did hour long, but were you on the writings? Were you a staff writer for The Shield?
No,
Because
I wrote a freelance episode. So Glenn Mazzara, who is always back in the day before it was popular, has always been a champion of diverse writers and diversifying the writers' room. And I think there was one person of color in his room, and maybe there was a team of 2 women writers. And so he did a open call to agents for a gig to write an episode. And I landed it. And at the time I was living in New Jersey. I flew out, my daughter was maybe 1, and I flew to LA and pitched my concepts and thoughts. And honestly, I hadn't watched the show beforehand.
No.
This was, I think, the 3rd or 4th season. I can't remember, but I binged, watched it. Kevin, my friend / ex-boss, had written on The Shield the year prior, so
Nice.
he knew the ins and outs of the shows. He knew the people, the personalities, so he somewhat prepped me. And yeah, I went in, pitched my concept, gave it my all, felt good about it. But as an actor or writer, you often feel good when you walk out and you just don't always get the gig, right?
right, you just have
Yeah.
to let it go and forget about it. Move on to the next. Yeah.
So I got it, and went back to Jersey, and it was done remotely when things weren't really done remotely back then.
Yeah.
And I did go back to LA when they shot it, and I remember really annoying Glenn Close because I couldn't believe she was, saying my words that I had written, and I was just like, I wrote that.
I love that. That's
And I was
awesome.
just such a fan of hers, and she was just kind of like, who is this lady? Can you please get her out of my face?
I'm the writer, man. I'm the writer. That's amazing. I love
I
that.
think she did come in the 4th season.
Yeah, so that was the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And so that's how it came about. And then we moved back to LA shortly. I got a new agent after that, because once you write on The Shield, then all these doors open. And
But the doors didn't open at on the Shield, like it was the one episode and that was it. There was no.
yeah, that was it for that.
Huh.
And I think we moved back to LA maybe within the following year. It's all a blur. Your life, when you look back, you're like, when did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
Especially when you move as much as you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are moving on. Is your ex-husband in the business, or he's in something entirely different?
Entirely different.
Don't you remember he has a stable income?
Right?
Yes,
It's funny, I just
yes.
took my daughter to see Barbie yesterday, and the reason we could move back to Los Angeles, he got a job at Mattel.
That's amazing.
I have a student who I taught at AFI who
Yeah.
is now an assistant to a high-powered director. And he called me yesterday, and I find it very rewarding that I still have meaningful relationships with a handful of my students, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
And he's in this conundrum because he's with this high-powered director, but he's making very little money. He's on a movie, so the movie, he's a line item. He's being paid as an assistant. He's not his assistant normally, just for the movie.
Yep.
The movie is in post-production, so he has 6-7 weeks left, and he was just reached out to about his previous kind of work, which was content. And I think it was for Bank of America or Time or something. And he would flown to Atlanta, put in a hotel and paid more than he would make in a month on his current job for 3 days work. And he's like, Leah, I'm in this conundrum. I don't know what to do. And it was really hard to kind of give him sage advice, because a part of me's like, you got to do you, boo. You got to pay the rent.
Yeah.
At the same time, he is with someone who could open doors. Question is, will he open doors?
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, with this really high profile director that you're assisting, and by saying oh, I'm out for 3 days, but at the same time, you do want to show that you have your own shit going on. So I didn't really give him a clear answer, but he was just like, how do I navigate this? So yeah, that's a bit of a sidebar about someone else, but
but it's important. And I always get concerned, you should ask that person that you're working for, listen, what do you think I should do? Are you going to open a door for me or what? It's not always that easy to do, right? They don't make themselves available to that. But circling back on that sort of sidelining, because it's teaching, did you go back to get your MFA in screenwriting so that you could take positions as an instructor?
Well, as I knew I wanted to potentially have the option to do what I'm doing now. Which is, I'm up for tenure next year. So to be a tenured professor, you have to have a master's.
Yeah.
And so so that's what I didn't really have this master plan with, flow charts, and I want to be here by this time.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I ever wanted to really get into academia, I had needed this degree.
Yeah.
And I also love school.
I do too.
So I love teaching. I love being in the classroom, and I love being a student. So for me, it was like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
God bless both of you.
I agree. I just want to say thank you so freaking much for being here. You are. I love the way you talk. I love the way you write. I think that you are so talented and special, and I'm so excited to see what else you have come out. It thrills me to know that you're doing a dramedy in Canada, and I'm psyched. I'm psyched.
You should do more podcasts, because you're a very good podcast
You're
guest.
a very good podcast host.
I think of myself as being so boring and dry, like most writers.
No, and you have
dry, yes. Boring, no.
Made love on Tuesday, on Wednesday she was down. We fought on Thursday, made up on Friday, but now I'm losing ground. You call me lazy, you think I'm crazy, so why'd you come around? She want my money, but I got no money. This ain't no savings and loan. you call